A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. In a high-stakes diplomatic mission, Steve Witkoff, the United States Special Envoy for the Middle East, has ventured into the heart of Moscow with the daunting task of negotiating peace amid escalating tensions in Ukraine. Arriving just days before President Donald Trump's ultimatum for Russia to engage in ceasefire talks, Witkoff's presence raises questions about the efficacy of American diplomacy and the future of U.S.-Russia relations. Witkoff's past attempts to mediate conflicts have often been met with skepticism, and this latest endeavor appears to be no different. As he meets with President Vladimir Putin, the backdrop of deteriorating relations and military posturing looms large. Trump's earlier proclamations of ending the war in Ukraine within 24 hours seem increasingly hollow as Witkoff finds himself grappling with the complexities of a conflict that has seen Russia make significant territorial gains in eastern Ukraine. The U.S. has issued threats of increased sanctions should Russia fail to comply with calls for a ceasefire. Yet the actual impact of such measures remains questionable given the already strained economic ties between the two nations. Russia's trade with the U.S. has plummeted due to previous sanctions, rendering the threat of additional punitive measures largely symbolic. Witkoff, who has previously been characterized as Trump's go-to Mr. Fix-It, faces mounting pressure to deliver tangible results. However, the reality on the ground reveals a stark contrast to diplomatic rhetoric. Ukraine has repeatedly expressed a willingness to engage in ceasefire discussions, yet Russia has consistently rebuffed these overtures, focusing instead on consolidating its military position. This dynamic has prompted Trump to publicly criticize Putin's tactics, but his actions suggest a reluctance to take decisive steps that could genuinely alter the course of the conflict. The geopolitical chessboard is further complicated by the involvement of other nations. India and China, both significant importers of Russian energy, have continued to bolster their economic ties with Moscow, undermining U.S. sanctions efforts. Trump's threats against these nations signal a broader strategy to isolate Russia economically, yet the effectiveness of such an approach remains to be seen. As Witkoff navigates the intricacies of his mission, the question remains: can American diplomacy cut through the fog of war and bring about a meaningful resolution? The answer may lie in the willingness of both sides to compromise and engage in sincere dialogue. Witkoff's recent meetings in Moscow, including discussions with key Russian officials, suggest that some lines of communication remain open. However, the lack of progress on the ground raises doubts about the potential for any breakthrough. With each passing day, the situation in Ukraine becomes increasingly dire, and the stakes for Witkoff and the Trump administration grow ever higher. The world watches closely as the clock ticks down to the deadline for negotiations, and the implications of Witkoff's mission extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine. Should he fail to achieve a ceasefire or meaningful concessions from Russia, the consequences could reverberate throughout the international community, impacting global security and economic stability. As the diplomatic landscape continues to shift, the role of American leadership in addressing these challenges will be critical. Witkoff's mission may ultimately serve as a litmus test for the effectiveness of U.S. foreign policy in an increasingly multipolar world, where alliances are tested and the balance of power is in flux. The outcome of this diplomatic endeavor remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the path to peace is fraught with obstacles, and the stakes have never been higher. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.